Hey, everybody, it's Lisa Copeland, and welcome to the Art of the Big Sell, the podcast, my show, where I interview the best and the brightest in business. And boy, today is absolutely no exception. Today on the show, I have got the amazing and fabulous, God, that volume. I got the absolute best and brightest. She's amazing. She is the founder of Anxiety Free Selling. She was the millionaire mom, which we will talk about in a little bit. She's been a friend and a colleague of mine for over 10 years. This girl is no joke. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and you can learn so much. She took a company public at 26, 27 years old. So without further ado, I want to introduce all of you to the fantastic podcast host. She's an author. She's a best-selling author. She's a host of her own podcast and the creator of Anxiety Free Selling with Joyce Bone. Joyce, say hello to our audience.
Hi, everybody. So glad to be here today, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to hang out with you, even if I have to do it on Zoom, because you and I can't get in the same cities long enough.
That's right. And it's a shame because it's Friday, almost 5 o'clock. So
and we like to have
cocktail
our
hour. Yes.
You remember that time you came to Austin to visit me like 8 years ago, and we had that huge, like the margaritas were the size of a fishbowl.
Yes, I do remember that. That was a fun day.
That was a fun day. I think we started drinking them about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, it wasn't that bad.
It might have been. Anyways, but we're not here to talk about our fun life that we have together. We're here to talk about you and the fact that you created, because I'm all about the big sell and big sellers and all about selling. And you have created what I think is probably one of the most amazing sales systems that I've seen in a long time. And it's anxiety free selling. So, tell us how you came up with that. And then we're going to talk about the Joyce Bone that I met originally, which was the author and herself, the millionaire mom. But I want to talk about anxiety free selling because I've been on a roll today trying to find the best and the brightest and, be able to talk to them about about their careers and their selling careers. But I don't think I've known anybody ever that has taken a company public at under 30 years old.
Yes, that was a trip for sure. So do you want me to talk about that or anxiety free selling first?
I think we're going to talk about anxiety free selling, and then I think we will go back to millionaire moms.
Okay. Well, I can kind of tie it into the other one too, just because that was my first real anxiety, was that process of taking a company public, was building that company from scratch from my kitchen table. I went from trying to come up with the idea to all of a sudden I was doing things. I was really outside of my league at the time. I was 28, not 26, but close enough to 26. A lot closer than I am now.
Yes, I'm going to testify to that.
I know. I look at 26, 28-year-olds now and I go, oh my God, I was so freaking young when I did all this stuff. It's crazy now that I'm older. At the time, it seemed perfectly normal to go out there. That's called, I guess, the brashness of youth. Yeah. So I really had severe anxiety about certain things I had to do. Like, I had to pitch to 50 what's called accredited investors, which is basically rich people. So I sat there, we put together what's called a private placement memorandum, or PPM, which of course I knew nothing about when I started, but learned as I went, and kind of built my wings on the way down, I guess you could say. And I was at the Peachtree DeKalb Airport here in the Atlanta area, and I was watching jet after jet fly in and park, and these guys come in and walk and sit down. And I had to raise $13 million, and I had never spoken in public before. And I was a communications major in college to avoid math. So the financial statements were not my strong suit, and that's what I would be talking about that day. So if I didn't raise the money, I wasn't going to have a business. So I had all this pressure. And I just felt this anxiety overcome me in the back. It's because I'm watching, I'm like, oh my God, these people are like in their 40s and 50s and they're rich and I'm young and I don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of started freaking myself out. to the point where I was seriously looking for a brown paper bag because I was hyperventilating. And I was like, and I'm literally seeing stars. That's how much anxiety I had. And I finally thought I was going to faint. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I need to pull it together. I'm like, this is on me. I have to make this happen. So, I told myself, Joyce, put on your big girl panties, get out there and do it. And so I finally just walked out there praying I didn't faint. And I did the actual pitch and I raised the money. And I'm sure it was terrible, but I raised the money and that's what mattered. So, that's part of what I focus on when I'm teaching people about anxiety-free selling is outcomes is what you're after. And so from that point on, I decided I did not want to be in a position again where I had that type of anxiety around speaking and persuading. So I kind of made it my life's mission to kind of work on my headspace and help others with theirs, because I can't tell you how many people I've coached that when it gets to, I know a lot about business because I've grown several businesses, multi-million dollars. So you can't just know sales. You have to know, every piece of it. So I would get to that part with a business owner and they would be like, oh, I really don't like to sell, and all the stories, all the beliefs would come up. And so I started working with them on their belief system. And I finally came up with a program to help people, really help people learn the path to set that aside and understand they're bringing value to the relationship. And it's all about languaging and your beliefs. So I just love helping people overcome selling anxiety. So that's why I made a course about it.
Yeah. And all the years, that I've trained sales teams and, had a car dealership and all of that, that's the one thing that stops people in their tracks. Sales organizations, it stops sales managers. There's something to having to go out and look somebody in the eye and ask them, are you ready to buy? Are you ready to buy it today? Now, you and I'm a little bit older than you. And so I started my career in the automotive industry when I was very young, and I had to close a certain amount of deals. And I was trained like a bulldog, they buy or they die. And I don't know that today that we would do things the same way. And I don't train people the same way. I think selling is a relationship business, but so I've personally never had the selling anxiety. I love to sell, you know me. And I know you love to sell. So it's so interesting to me because I didn't know you when you were 26, but I knew you when you were 36 and you were a machine, sister. So what do you think that pivotal point was? What was the one thing that, you flipped the switch and you said, no more, I'm going to repurpose my fear. And not only am I going to do that, but I'm going to show others how to do it too.
Well, I took action for one thing, because after I gave that one speech and I had a panic attack about it, I thought I have to learn how to present in front of people without fainting. And everybody knows that statistics show more people would rather die than get on stage and speak in public. So I made it a mission. I started attending Toastmasters. And I went through their CTM program where you give 10 speeches and they give you a certificate. You can go beyond that. But I did it to get over my fear of speaking in front of people. Now, how did I get over my fear of, selling in general? You talked about, well, gosh, I've always been good at that. It never bothered me. Well, in life,
it was good. It didn't bother me. I think I've always believed in what I was selling.
Well, that's a big part of it, right? You have to believe in what you're selling. If you don't, you're dead in the water. But in anything in life, there's the 80-20 rule, right? You get 80% of your results from 20% of your actions. Same with salespeople. 20% of the salespeople get 80% of the business. And 80% of the salespeople are not, they're doing 20%. So that's why there's a lot of churn in the sales industry, because the cream of the crop rises to the top, but there's this huge segment of 80% of people that could do and be so much better if they were taught and trained properly on how to manage their brain when they go to sell. You don't call it cold calling, if you were like, oh, I have to sit at my desk and cold call, does that sound enticing? No, that does not sound enticing. If you sit at your desk and you're like, I'm going treasure hunting, I'm going to go find some gold. So that's a totally different.
I'm going to go make a paycheck. Let's just start there.
Yeah. Or I'm going to go help people. I'm calling people. They are so lucky that they're getting a phone call from Joyce phone. They don't even know it. They're getting a call from me. I'm going to help them sell their house, whatever the situation is. And when they meet me, they're going to be blessed by me because I'm going to bring my best. I'm really good at negotiations. So I pump myself up before ever trying to sell anything to anybody or even approach people, because you bring energy to a relationship. And we've all been around people that it's like,
where it's painful to have a conversation with them.
Yes. So to me, I make a game out of it. I just, if I get a grumpy Gus, I just kind of get playful and try to draw them out of it. And it's all, again, going back to learning specific techniques designed to help you be your best. Because when you're your best, you bring your best to the situation and you raise your level of sales ultimately, because you're not holding yourself back. You're not organizing I used to love to organize, and I still like an organized desk, but I can't make any calls until my desk is organized, mess around, waste time. And then you also learn to program and calendar block, which we both do.
Yes, I'm a firm believer in calendar blocking. You have to make time to prospect. I mean, I've got salespeople and sales teams all the time, and they say to me, at least that, it just seems like I get so busy. And I said, there's nothing more important. I don't care what it is. There's nothing more important than trying to find your next customer. Mm-hmm. So the majority of your time, if you're in sales, and I don't care what kind of sales it is prospecting, is building that pipeline. So talk to us, Joyce, about building pipelines. I know you know how to do it, because one thing I failed to mention about you is that, you are in every gamut of the real estate industry. You're a realtor, you're a real estate investor. You've been very, very successful in the real estate industry. And I promise it didn't happen because the clients came running in the front door, although I know you get a lot of referrals now. But in the beginning, when I talk to you, sometimes you say, Lisa, I have to go. I've blocked these 2 to 3 hours for prospecting, for calling people. And I'm like, okay, I got to go. Mm-hmm. And so you're very regimented about it. But then I look at your success and it's proof. You walk your talk.
Well, because I know what I want and I go and get it. And so for me, I spend the first half of my day doing my proactive work. So that would involve, it could be writing a letter to prospects it's called farming a neighborhood. It could be making phone calls. It could be calling people in my database, just whatever is considered prospecting work. And it could be that I'm working on my anxiety-free selling. So I block my days and my times based on what my needs are. And I do know that if you don't prospect, you're going to see this ripple effect, sometimes in very short order, but certainly within 90 days. If you didn't prospect 90 days ago, you're going to be feeling that, right? So all of a sudden, you're going to have a dry pipeline. You're going to be scrambling to make money because salespeople get paid really well or they make no money. And that's sort of how it works. It's very, very transparent. And that scares most people. Most people don't want their paycheck accountable to their actions. They'd rather just get their paycheck.
I do. I want my paycheck based on what I produce. And I know you do.
Exactly. Because you're a salesperson. Mm-hmm. So am I. And so is independent contractors, financial services, real estate, franchisees. There's a lot of people that eat what they kill. That's what I call it. And so when you realize, heck, I'm not going to get paid if I don't prospect, you tend to get really good at it really fast. But I like to work with the people that, again, the 80% that are okay at it. They're okay, but they could rise so much higher and get exponential return on their investment in the form of more cash if they would just take these mindset habits that I talk about in my course and my coaching and consulting and start applying it to their life. And not only will they make more sales, they're going to be happier. That's the biggest thing. That is the biggest thing for me is life is short. You need to have fun. It can become overwhelming very quickly, especially when you're in your peak responsibility years, when you have kids that you're trying to raise and you're trying to work. Maybe you have parents that need attention. I mean, there's so many things pulling at you that it's hard to, one, focus on prospecting because there's so many other things coming at you. And it's not that you're lazy, you're busy. You're just busy, but you have to learn to.
But Joyce, you said something a minute ago. You said making the investment in yourself. And I love that you said that because I believe that great salespeople are built, they're not born. You know, we are highly trained machines. I know I've spent, probably $50,000 or $100,000 personally on executive coaches over the years, speaking coach. And of course, it's ROI'd many, many times over since I'm a paid professional speaker, as are you. But, you know, I've invested in myself. The way, if you remember, the way you and I met was through our speaking coach, Steve Siebold.
That's right.
And you and I had spent a lot of money to be at this event. And I continued on training with him for 4 years. And he said to me, he said, Lisa, you need to go meet Joyce Bone. He said, the two of you will be the greatest friends because you're built so much alike. But that's how you and I met over 10 years ago, is that we were at an event that we spent a lot of money to be at to train and hone our skills as professional paid speakers. So that being said, it's no different for salespeople. You have to make the investment in yourself because great salespeople are built, they're not born, and you've got to build it. You can't rely on your employer to build you. You can't rely on anybody but yourself. And, I know this for a fact, because like I said, I've spent over 6 figures, especially in the speaking and entertainment, film training and that type of thing. But it's ROI'd 100-fold. And so, let's talk about that. Let's talk about, what happens when now you're able to set the anxiety on the shelf. Now you're confident. Now you feel good when you pick up the telephone. What is that worth to somebody? The cost of a course? I mean, the cost of having a private coach like you? I mean, it ought to be worth 100-fold that, because what happens is that you start to enjoy life again and you start making a lot more money because you understand what it takes to create a great environment, not only for you, but for your customer.
I have never invested in myself and regretted it. I have always gotten exponential returns. I posted, Tony Robbins the other day was talking about how he got beyond his scarcity mentality when he was in his early 20s. He was literally down to his last $20. And he'd gone to go eat like at an all-you-can-eat buffet so he could stock up for the winter, so to speak, and not eat for a week after that. And he saw this little fella there with his mother and all dressed up, and he gave the kid the money to pay for their meal. He literally was broke. And he said that he never felt freer because he did it out of a good place in his heart. And he ran home, jogged home, felt fantastic. And the next day he got a check in the mail for $1,000 from this guy that had owed him money for a long time with interest. So he literally went from not knowing where his next meal is to the universe returning that money to him. And I just think that is part of it. The faith, some people call it law of attraction, faith, whatever you want to call it. I believe it's a real energy that's out there because it worked for me. So as part of my growing, how I started my business was my first business that went public. I was standing in a Walmart cleaning supply aisle with tears in my eyes because I realized if I bought another bottle of Tide, that I was going to be over budget. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I was 27 years old. I had my 18-month-old in the basket. And I thought, this is ridiculous. If I'm going to be over budget now, with Tide, what the heck is going to happen when this little guy is 18 and wants to play travel baseball and needs braces and is going to go to college and wants to go out with his friends and on and on and on?
The anxiety hits you.
Oh, big time. And I drove home and I committed to myself I was going to change my story. My husband was already working full time and doing the best that he could. So I knew if it was meant to be, it was up to me. And I took complete responsibility for the situation. And I put on my thinking cap and I just said, I'm not changing my mind on the drive home. Because you know how sometimes you get like a great idea and then you talk yourself out of it on the way home. I said, that is not happening. I'm going to go home and I'm going to figure this out. And the first thing I did was I started thinking about Tony Robbins tapes, because it was tapes back then. And I thought, well, I really wish I could get those tapes, because Tony seems to know what he's talking about. And this was before the internet was really full force and information wasn't.
Back in the days of infomercials, because I think I bought those tapes.
Yes, I bought them too.
Yeah.
Now I had to look at my budget and I was like, I can't even get Tide. What makes me think I can pay $250? Because the old Joyce would have said, oh no, I can't afford that next. But the new Joyce, who was committed, looked at the budget and I saw that we were tithing $250 a month, the exact amount of the tapes. I bought the tapes. I listened to them once. I did what they said, and then I donated them to the Cherokee County Library. So I was still keeping that flow of sharing energy going. But if I hadn't been tithing that money, I wouldn't have had the money to buy the tapes. And from those tapes, I made 7 figures in 2 years. So $250 into $1 million. What's that? What kind of return on investment is that?
I was a fashion major. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you. It's like 100,000%, right? So it's a lot. And so ever since then, I've never hesitated. If I need to know something, I will invest the money, even if it's hard. I mean, I know it's like, oh, well, it's easy for you. No, it's not easy for me. I have 3 kids that have been in private school and college, and, you know, it's expensive life, and, you know, I still work. And so it's not always easy for me, but I always know that if you have faith in yourself, somehow it always, and you do the work. You know, you can buy something, it sits on a shelf and becomes a shelf trophy. But if you buy something and invest the energy into doing it, you will always get a return on that.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been, I guess, 14 years ago, I hired my first executive coach, which was Steve, and it was $18,000 a year. It was $1,500 a month. And, you know, at the time I was just like, I don't know, but I was on the cusp of doing a lot of big things. And then, you know, I made the decision one night. I said, you know, I can't afford not to do it. So I took the plunge. It made me, you know, really, really, because I think you have to be invested in something. If somebody gives you something, it doesn't have any value. And that's what I tell my coaching clients and my, and all of the people, you know, the corporations I work with, like, it costs this much because I need you invested. I need your attention. And when you write a big check, you have people's attention. And back then, $1,500 a month was a big check to write, you know, for executive coaching and speaking and that type of thing. So I showed up every week. I did the work, and that's a big part of it too, to be successful, is to do the work, you know. And so if you're not willing to invest in yourself, why would anybody else invest in you? Mm-hmm. And that was always a big resume builder for me when I went out and, you know, I would talk to people, you know. And now when I talk to people and I tell them this is what it's going to cost to work with me, and they're like, ugh, and I'm like, I don't want to hear it, because I did the same thing you did in today's dollars back then. And that's the cost of doing business. And it's the cost of investing in yourself. I mean, you can take that money and you can put it in the stock market, and what kind of return is it going to get? 10, 15%, who cares? You put that money into yourself. You invest in yourself, and you, just like you did, 100,000 return. I've probably done 1,000 return, you know, a lot return on the money I've invested in myself over the years, because I'm better for it. I'm sharper for it. I know my industry, and so do you. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you know, 401k, that's great. That's for the future, but you've got to invest in the today, because there's a lot of competition out there. Don't you think, Joyce?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's not another Lisa and Joyce, that's for sure. Right.
That's right, girl. Okay, so what I want to get are 3 big takeaways from anxiety-free selling. Like, so when they get off the show today and they listen to our show, what are the 3 things they can go, okay, 1, 2, 3, that's going to help them kind of woo-saw when they go to work tomorrow if they're in the selling business?
Mm-hmm. Well, it starts with your mental chatter. We all have it. Doesn't mean if you have a negative thought, you're not wrong. Just think of it like a cloud and let it float on by and out the door, right? So because what you say to yourself, your subconscious mind believes and acts on. So the old phrase, if you think you're right, you're right. If you think you're wrong, you're right too. So it starts right there with what you're thinking. Right. Nobody else can see or hear or know what you're thinking. But if you're not empowering yourself, that you're dead in the water. And then I would say languaging. Languaging is really, really important. So you can be taken different ways in your sales, right? And with your family and friends, and all in what language you use. So you're lying. Well, that has one response. I think you're mistaken has another response, right? There's different ways. I would take words that you use a lot and write out the opposite of it as you're not bald, you're follically challenged. Just come up with something.
I've never heard that one before. I may have to tweet that one today, Joyce, but I will.
I just pulled that one right out of the air. So just think about words that you use, like metaphors. My world is crazy. My world is exhilarating, because literally it's like you draw to yourself the things that you say. So it's really important that you kind of come up with the opposite of, or a better version. I heard a funny story about Ken Blanchard, who was on a safari and everybody was freaking out because the Jeep broke down. It was dark. They're in Africa and things are coming in to get them. And everybody's freaking out. And what he said was, wow, this is inconvenient. So everyone's throwing F-bombs. He's like, yeah, this is inconvenient. Who remained calmer in the situation? So that would be, what you say to yourself, your languaging, and then outcomes. It comes back to it. It's like, what do you want? What do you want? I know what I want. So if I know what I want, then it becomes why, because you could say, well, I want this. I want more money. Well, here's $10. Good luck. Bye. You did it. Or, it's like, I want this amount of money by this date, which is what I did when I was 27. I set a big goal for myself. It was not a small goal. And I set a tight timeline and I did it. I did it 6 months earlier than what I set. Now, if I'd said, I'd like, some money eventually, what do you think the outcome would have been? So be specific with what you want, know exactly what it is. I mean, down to, if you want a new car, well, what kind of car do you want? What make, what model, what year?
Well, and part of what I'm hearing is that people have got to be intentional about what their goals are. I'm intentional every day that, my team is going to make this many phone calls to this many companies, or we're going to call this many previous clients, or this many meeting planners to set up speaking events. So it's intentional. So would you agree with that on your outcomes, that you have to be intentional on what your outcome is? And that I'm hearing you also say that you have to say it to the universe, which I have said from the beginning of time. If I say it out loud, it'll happen. And if I don't, it won't. Mm-hmm. It's just a weird thing, but I swear everything in my life has happened because I've said it out loud.
I agree. And a lot of, again, going back to anxiety-free selling, the majority of that takes place within your brain, within your mind, inside your head. And that's why I'm kind of, getting into that with you today, because I can teach you how to prospect. I can teach you the steps. Boom, 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 boom. That is like a tactic, right? That's just, you got to do this. But what I'm trying to reach out to people and show them is these things that we're talking about now, these 3 tips. That's where it all begins. Before you ever sit at your desk, I get up every morning. I go to the gym. I get up at 5 a.m. I'm at the gym usually around 5:30. And then I'll sit in the car for about 15 minutes with a business book. And I'll sit there and I'll read the business book for, 15, 20 minutes, put the book down, go inside, have my podcast on. I used to listen to music. And then I started listening to YouTube videos and I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. I'm really being fed positive information here. So I listen to all different kinds of people. And so I'm lifting weights. I've got this great mental information going into my head. afterwards, I go into the sauna, I meditate in there, I stretch, I do hot yoga, and I pray and I think about my day. And that is a power morning, my friend.
Yes.
That really sets the tone for me.
Better than coffee. Adrenaline is better than coffee.
Yeah, but I really like coffee too. I heard an apple is actually better than coffee for waking you up, but I don't think I'm going to test that theory. I'm going to stick with coffee.
I'm telling you, I don't think that would work for me. All right, so you're so amazing and you've got everything going on for you. Like I said, I can personally testify to the success that you've had over the at least last 10 or 12 years that I've known you. I read your first book, Millionaire Moms, which was a fantastic read. I know you've got your podcast. It's about, I know you're recording for it now and it's going to come out probably in the next 30 days.
April 2nd.
April 2nd is when you're going to launch. Okay, which is Anxiety-Free Selling with Joyce Bone. I know they can find it on iTunes, which I'm going to post in the Facebook Live portion of this. But how else can they find the amazing Joyce Bone?
Well, thank you for that. Joyce at joycebone.com is my email. So feel free to email me and I would love to hear from you. I love talking to people and seeing what their needs are and helping them.
Well, I posted on the Facebook Live page that the big idea is to focus on outcomes. And to me, that's such a big idea because most people want to stay granular. They want to stay in it. But when you want to go for the big sell, you want it, the art of the big sell. If you want to be a big seller, then you've got to focus on the outcome. It's almost like you have to say, this is where I want to be. This is the level I want to be. Now you've got to reverse engineer it backwards on how you're going to get there. And you're going to do it by your thinking, making sure that your thinking's right, the languaging, which is really communication, because you cannot be great without great communication. And then, of course, focusing on the outcome. I mean, Joyce, you are a star. Your podcast, again, is launching on April 2nd, which is what day of the week?
Monday.
So it'll be every Monday at what time Eastern?
11 o'clock.
So every Monday, 11 o'clock Eastern, if you want some more of Joyce's brilliance, starting on April 2nd on iTunes, and it'll be Anxiety-Free Selling with Joyce Bone. And I'm putting that in the notes over here. You can keep up with this rock star. I know you can keep up with her on social media. So that's a great thing. And then go to her website and see what she's all about, because I'm a huge fan, my friend.
Thank you, Lisa. You know, I'm a huge fan of yours.
Well, back at you, like mutual love. I think you and I need to get in the same city pretty quick.
We definitely do.
Well, all right, my friend. Yes. Well, thank you so much again for sharing with everybody. This is kind of a double deal. We're out live on Facebook right now. It'll be in the podcast, The Art of the Big Sell, which is every Friday at 12:30 every Friday 12:30 Central Standard Time on iTunes also, or on lisacopeland.com. All right, everybody, take care. Happy Friday. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll be back at you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Hold on, Joyce. Good.